I am the sticker. For a fee, I can make your enemies, or anyone you want, disappear. I do not attack them. I do not murder them. I do not bury them. I send them to prison. I pin crimes on them. They become the bottom rung of society. I ensure that these people rot. For the price I charge, these people must deserve it. Because these people will never see the light of day again. I can pin any crime on any person and make it stick. I'm going to tell you a set of stories. This is story 1. This is the story of the first time I ever did this, at the age of 17. I made a friend's stepfather disappear. He's currently... We'll get to that later. I'd just like to point out that I'm English. However, I have many friends around the world, the majority of which are in the United States. This story is about my very dear friend, Jennifer. Jennifer was a lovely girl. A year older than me, Jennifer was leaps and bounds ahead of her peers when it came to maturity. While only 18, she was probably smart enough to have already graduated an Ivy League college. She, while speaking with me on her various visits to England and on phone calls, had a heightened amount of charisma. She was the most confident person I knew. Was being the prominent factor here. About 1 month after turning 18, her mother passed away. Cancer. It had gotten to the point of it being so bad that Jennifer had confided in me that she, on some morbid level, just wished that the disease would just take her now rather than later to minimize the pain for everyone. After her death, she took it really hard. Her stepfather took it worse though. He basically stopped functioning. That was until about 3 weeks after her mother's funeral. Jennifer's stepfather, Lawrence, decided to mourn in his own unique way. He tried to force himself on Jennifer. Jennifer resisted as much as she could, but it was of no use. He was twice her size. He wasn't built like a brick shithouse by any means, but he was a really strong man. He would touch her inappropriately, force her to kiss him, force her hand down his pants. Jennifer was so broken by her whole ordeal though, that she didn't know how to stop him. She didn't try. It wasn't until one particular night that she finally called me in tears, as she was, quote, running out of time. That particular night is the night that I've taken to calling the night of my rebirth. She got home around 3 PM after studying for entrance exams for college. She had told me that she felt a headache coming on, so was going to get an ibuprofen from the pill drawer, when her stepfather told her to use what was in the little purple bottle. Skeptically, she told him no. There was no label on it. It looked sketchy. Lawrence then employed his somewhat magical powers on her. He just stared at her in a way that said, "Don't want to do things my way? Well then, I'll just have to punish you." Remember, we're talking about 2 adults here, but I don't care if Jennifer's age had the word teen at the end of it or not. He was talking to her like she was 12, and using her like she was some submissive from Craigslist. She reluctantly took 2 of the pills from the little purple bottle and sipped down some water with it. She then went up to her room to begin more studying. As soon as she pulled out her laptop, the room began to spin and she had an uncontrollable urge to vomit. As she was about to faceplant the bed though, she saw his face creeping around the door. His evil smile stitched on his face, the grin spanning from ear to ear. The last thing she saw before blackness took over was Lawrence beaming down at her evil intentions emblazoned on his eyes. Eventually, she came to. Her heavy eyes opened, and the last thing she noticed was that the ceiling of her bedroom appeared to be moving. A few seconds of confusion went by until she realized that it was her that was moving, up and down her bed in a rhythmic motion. She then slowly looked down the bed to see Lawrence mounting her. She tried to scream out, but nothing came. She was gagged. She tried to reach out and stop him, punch him, kick him, but she was tied to the bed. He then noticed her awake and squealing from behind her gag. This was when she told me. He said, "Ah, you're awake. Good. Just in time for the climax. I have to say, you feel so much better than that pussy mother of yours. The best thing she ever did for us was die. We can be together forever now." He lost it. He legitimately believed that it was a blessing that Jennifer's mother had died, and that she had been the sole reason that he and Jennifer couldn't have been together in the first place. This man was a respected member of his office. He worked as an insurance broker and competed against other employees for top sales and other targets. People got on with this man, watched football with this man, drank beer with this man. Had they have known what fucked up shit he was doing behind closed doors in his own home, they would have burned him at the stake. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't Jennifer just go to the police? That would work, normally. This was not normal though. Of course, the top dog of the local sheriff's department in their little town was Lawrence's brother, and there was no police department, just the sheriff's office. There was no sibling rivalry in that family. Had Jennifer told the brother what was going on? Well, he'd just have asked Lawrence if he was allowed to join in the festivities. It just so happened that after this event took place, of which Jennifer never did and still hasn't told me the entirety of what happened that night, I found out that I was going to be vacationing in the US that year. The last family holiday I was ever going to get with my family was going to be big. Disneyland. It wasn't far from Jennifer. I won't say where she lived or where this event took place. It's a small town, but they still have internet. This shit cannot get back to anyone. I had made plans on seeing some of the friends I had made over the year doing podcasts, video gaming and posting on forums. I told my dad that for 3 days out of our 3-week trip, I'd be making a little trip to see someone. A dear friend. A girl. I knew that would make him give me that little nudge with a twinkle in his eye, like he was doing me a favour. He had no idea how right he was. In the few weeks leading up to see Jennifer, I had an idea. How do you get someone to disappear without murdering them? You get creative. This is when I should mention that I had for the better part of 2 years been messing around with the darknet. Messing around isn't the correct term, actually. That's how it started, but I ended up becoming a bit of an expert on this field. I set out a week before the trip, looking for various things on Tor. Very specific. And then I found it. People who were looking to donate their lives. For the low fee of absolutely nothing, people were looking for suicide help. It could have just been moral support, handing them the knife, or committing the act for them. Whatever it may have been, this link was filled with thousands of people wanting to off themselves. I found one name on the list that was near to Jennifer's location. It was perfect. I got into contact with this person with the screen name MurderMeX114 and set up a meet. On the first night of being in Jennifer's small town, I met this guy for coffee. I asked him why he wanted to end his life and if this was really what he wanted. He told me that he was literally the only surviving member of his family. Everyone he had ever cared about, including friends, had passed away. He wanted to join them. He didn't know if it was pearly gates, fire and brimstone, level 2 of this game, or nothing but darkness waiting on the other side. But he couldn't just wait. He wanted to see. He profusely said not to try and talk him out of this. He wanted to die, and if I wasn't going to be a part of it, he'd go straight home and perform the act himself. Alone. In short, we shook hands, set a time for the next day, and I gave him the location of where to meet. After meeting up with him, I met up with Jennifer. She broke down in tears as soon as she saw me. Face to face, she told me she felt like things were about to get worse. I told her it wasn't going to last for much longer. I promised. Now for some tech stuff. About a week or so before going to the US, I had Jennifer supply me with Lawrence's email address and his basic information. The idiot's Facebook password was his date of fucking birth. Come on, people. Practice proper password precautions. Apparently he didn't check Facebook much. He did for notifications every now and again, but Jennifer told me that he never had push notifications enabled on his phone. He wasn't even logged in. This is when I found the person from the Tor dark site. I had him add Lawrence's account, and he gave me his account information too, and I set about making some Facebook messages. Between that day and leaving for Florida, I started making a message chain between the two accounts. I had it seem as though they were friends who met suddenly on one day and hit it off. I had it so that, we'll call him Troy from Tor, would just make a small accusation, and then have Lawrence blow the fuck up at him, saying that if he ever saw Troy again, he'd kill him. Perfect. A small puzzle piece was in place. Next was to set up the house. Lawrence was out that day. It was then that we set about pinning a crime on Lawrence. In this case, murder. It wasn't really going to be murder. It was really suicide. I just wasn't stepping in to stop. There really wasn't much to do in the house except wait for Lawrence to come home. The way Lawrence has to park his car at home means there's about 5 whole minutes between him leaving his car and entering his house. The view from Jennifer's window looked straight down to the parking lot. As soon as she gave the signal, myself and Troy would jump into action. I started to worry about surveillance cameras in the area and was about to get a bit panicky that this was going to go sideways. Jennifer kindly reminded me that this wasn't Great Britain, that there wasn't 5 million cameras across the country, and that the area was just plain shitty. That put my mind at ease. Troy was being friendly and was the kind of guy I could really get along with and, scarily, was relatable. No matter how friendly I was being though, he would always remind me that he wanted to be with his family and friends. No amount of friendliness was going to change his mind. After some waiting around, Jennifer gave the go-ahead. It was time. I was wearing what was basically a clean suit, the type of suit people wear when cleaning chemicals. I wasn't wearing it so nothing would get on my clothes though. I was wearing it so that nothing on me contaminated my crime scene. One bead of sweat, one strand of hair, one dab of saliva, and it would be curtains for this whole thing. The next thing was I grabbed Lawrence's chrome college baseball bat. It was by the door, for some reason, so it would be a logical choice. I then ran Troy through what to do and how to do it in order for it to be believable. The time was now. Troy shoved me up against the wall that faced the front door. We started having a real fight. Troy was pulling most of his punches, but I wasn't. I couldn't. I punched him in the side of the head, knocking him off balance. This gave me a chance to grab the baseball bat. I proceeded to beat the snot out of Troy. Shots to the midriff, the back, the legs, and finally, the face. I held nothing back. When all was said and done, I said, "I knocked this onto the floor. Grab it." Troy struggled to grab for what I had told him to, and he smeared blood along the floor while he did it. I stooped down next to his head and said, "Thank you, Troy. You didn't have to do this. I'll always thank you and remember for this." Through broken teeth and a blood-soaked face, Troy replied, "Lily, John, Courtney, Charlotte, Mom, Dad, Andrew, Jordan, Allie, Lily, John, Courtney, Charlotte, Mom, Dad, Andrew, Jordan, Allie, Lily, John." That was mine and Jennifer's cue to exit. Next was to go find somewhere to watch and call the police, saying it sounded like something really bad was happening. Instead, Jennifer came up with the idea of walking in after Lawrence so she could be a witness. We slipped out the back and rounded the house back to the front. We saw Lawrence walk in and Jennifer quietly followed. This was what she said she saw.
"I saw him walk in the door and have a good look round. He was confused. He then walked up to the kitchen where Troy was. He could see his foot sticking out in a crack in the door. He called out, asking who was there. He pushed the door open and saw Troy on the floor. Troy was now whispering the names of his friends and family. Lawrence stooped down and I heard him ask, "What? Who did this to you?" There was a small pause before Troy shouted, "I'm coming home, everyone." He shifted his gaze to Lawrence and shouted, "Burn in hell, you monster." He then...
Jennifer began crying here, but she finally was able to muster up the courage to finish her sentence.
He then pulled the knife out in the way you told him to, with a gloved hand, and slit his own throat from ear to ear. Deep. Really deep.
That was when Jennifer burst into the kitchen screaming,
oh my god, you fucking killed him. I saw it, I saw you."
and ran out the house while dialing 911. The next thing that happened was purely organic. We didn't expect it, but it made it 6 million times better. We saw Lawrence lift Troy's lifeless body from the house to the small garden. He then started digging. Lawrence was fucking burying Troy. We didn't know what the fuck was happening, but it was perfect. The sheriff's department showed up, and Jennifer was still hiding, until a neighbouring city's police department rocked up too. She then revealed herself, recounting her story in the best possible way, Lawrence's brother looking on, and it was just a sweet thing to see. After all was said and done, Lawrence went down for murder in the 1st degree, and after serving 3 years of his life sentence, he was accidentally killed while being raped in the prison showers. Talk about poetic justice. Jennifer and I still speak from time to time. I'll bring her up again soon. She does know what it is I do, but doesn't ask any of the gory details. I actually see her from time to time as well. For now, just know this. If you had the money and needed someone to disappear into the system, I was your guy. The worse the person was, the cheaper it was. I wasn't really in the business of settling small arguments, but for the right price, I could be persuaded. I'm retired now, and these are my stories. I'll be posting these whenever I can, but just remember, if you know someone who went down for a horrendous crime, they just might be innocent. I might have sent them down, although I'm retired, for the right price, I will still send someone else down. Do not piss anyone with money off. Likewise, don't piss a desperate person off. People will grab loans that they cannot possibly pay off just to get rid of people. I offer a service. If you really needed me, I was only a large transaction away. This became fun for me, and recounting these stories is going to be fun as well, as I am the sticker.